I was gonna ask Patrick if he wants to stay for supper, if that's okay with you. You wanna join us? I made way too much.
Oh. Well, that's alright. I'll just come back and get him. What time should I come back?
No matter how broken you are, the world doesn't stop for your grief. This point is made all too clear by Kenneth Lonergan's 2016 film Manchester by the Sea. The film follows Lee Chandler after the death of his brother Joe. Lee must return to his hometown, the film's namesake, where he finds he has been named the guardian of his brother's child, his nephew Patrick.
I don't understand.
Which part are you having trouble with?
Well, I can't be his guardian.
It is not long before Lee's past traumas start to catch up with him, battling to find balance between his unbearable grief and the responsibility to care for his nephew. The film is a raw portrayal of a broken soul who is forced to face his past. One of the most genuine feeling films of recent times, Manchester by the Sea is a study of life as it is lived in the real world, with unassuageable pain, loose ends untied, life lessons unlearned, life with no narrative closure. With 2 Academy Awards, for Casey Affleck's authentically subtle performance in the lead role and Kenneth Lonergan's painfully truthful screenplay, the film is an artistic masterpiece of cinematic realism.
So I just keep going to the store. And that's it. The log must have rolled out onto the floor.
Taking a realism approach in his writing, Lonergan reflects this choice cinematically as well. However, he goes beyond simply filming in a way that appears true to life. The film feels like real life, like we are watching in on a real person who is experiencing real things. This is achieved in a multitude of ways, including the finely tuned writing and the outstanding performances, but really proves itself in the filmmaking. Lonergan rejects the Hollywood and art house approach amplified in the cinematic works of formalism and classicism, and shows us what is truly meant by realism. We don't cut away to the next shot on every beat of the music, but rather hold on to a shot in stillness and silence, preserving life's duller moments. We don't push into a close-up of an actor's face in what most movies would highlight as an emotional scene, but rather pull back with a wide shot and show the smaller imperfections of real life that formalism and classicism remove. We don't see a glorified depiction of the film's thematic ideas, but rather a more accurate representation of life as it is lived in the real world. And in that real world, grief doesn't conform to the Hollywood style. It is sporadic and irrational, springing on us in the most unexpected of times, and nowhere to be seen in those Hollywood moments.
I'm sorry, Lee. He passed away about an hour ago.
Oh.
Lonergan's cinematography disconnects us from the characters of the film to mimic and produce a more accurate depiction of grief, where we don't feel with the characters, only for them. Manchester by the Sea is a perfect example of where the filmmakers don't place style over substance, but rather style in support of substance. The minimalistic approach in the filmmaking perfectly captures the feelings associated with the realism of the content, packaging the film in a more emotionally resonant form. When looking at the film as a whole, one of the most prominent and easily identifiable cinematic techniques in Manchester by the Sea is the use of flashbacks. However, they take on a rather different form than how we are used to seeing them, usually signified to us in some way, whether through the infamous cross-dissolve, extreme push-ins, or sometimes more simply through the likes of narration or even title cards. However, Manchester by the Sea takes a different approach, a more subdued means of conveying a flashback. There is nothing flash about them. They are completely spontaneous and are not indicated in any way. The film simply continues as though nothing has changed, walking straight from one scene into another. At some points, it is more obvious that we are viewing the past, like when we see Patrick as a much younger child, or when the film cross-cuts between the past and the present in shorter bursts. But at other times it is far more elusive, such as this scene near the beginning of the film, where we cut between the same hospital building at 2 different times, when Joe is diagnosed with congestive heart failure, and shortly after he has died from it. This particular scene, being very early on in the film, is quite confusing for the audience upon first viewing, as we are unsure of whether Joe has died or not.
Where's my brother?
Oh, he's downstairs. You could see him if you want.
What happened to him?
Just a cardiac
When Lee
arrest.
leaves the hospital, it is made clear that what we have just watched was a culmination of the past and the present, interlaced together. While this may seem like a rather meaningless topic to discuss, the subtlety of this technique actually plays rather heavily into the film's overall emotional impact. We don't see Lee start reminiscing and flash back to his memories, but rather witness his memories in a fluidity of time. The flashbacks arrive unannounced and break up the action of Lee's daily life, demonstrating how his past traumas are still very active inside his present self. They aren't used plainly as expositional tools to relay information, but actively work to demonstrate the perpetual effect that the past has on Lee's life. They don't simply inform us what has happened, but why everything is happening the way it is happening right now, connecting the dots between the audience's empathy and an emotionally void human being. This process happens very gradually, but only makes the point stand that much stronger, humanizing the story and its protagonist. From an outsider's perspective, Manchester by the Sea may seem to many like an uninspired film that has nothing unique to show us, at least in terms of its filmmaking. But after watching the film, there is an undeniable feeling that few movies can encapsulate authentically. It is through the distinctly minimal style of the cinematography and editing that Lonergan is able to humanize the character of Lee in such a genuine and emotionally moving way. He is for the most part, and especially when we first meet him, portrayed as a cold-natured and closed-off individual with no real redeeming qualities about him. It is only when we walk in his shoes in a more true-to-life and less like a movie way that we understand why he is the way he is. The film feels less like we are merely following a character and more like we are watching in, uninvited, on a true person. And despite all the realism, there is still room for symbolic undertones, such as the idea of a burial being likened directly to the idea of laying something to rest. Joe is unable to be buried because the ground is frozen, leaving the characters unable to lay him to rest, both in the figurative and literal sense. These kinds of ideas punctuate the film in principally thematic scenes, the likes of include, as stated before, the unpredictable moments where we witness grief surfacing.
I just don't like it being in the freezer.
You've expressed that very clearly. I don't like it either.
This symbolic idea also mimics Lee's own inability to put his past traumas to rest. Instead, his cold persona is all that remains of his past self, enduring onwards like an eternal winter, the primary landscape that represents the film. It is the small details like this that emphasize the film's ability to artistically convey a story with such a degree of humanity, and simultaneously engage the audience on a more metaphoric and thought-provoking level. Just as in its style, Manchester by the Sea diverts from Hollywood conventions in its story as well, offering an ending that doesn't satisfy the build-up. The characters don't change in any dramatic ways, they don't alter their perception of the world, and they don't overcome their flaws. The film emphasizes that in the real world, not everyone recovers from everything. Not everyone can just move on from every situation, or learn how to grow from the past.
My heart was broken. It's always gonna be broken. But I know yours is broken too.
Lee is unable to move on, held firmly between the past and the future, in a hollowed out present. Against his will, he is driven back to everything he has been trying to avoid, and unlike many other movies may attempt to depict, Lee doesn't overcome his traumas.
You understand? There's nothing there. There's nothing there.
That's not true. That's
There's
not
nothing there.
true.
I'm serious. You don't understand. And I
Of
don't know
course
what
I
this.
do.
I know you understand. I've got to go. I'm sorry.
Lee spends the whole film running from his past and trying to avoid facing the truth. But when he must explain to Patrick the plan for a family friend to adopt him, Lee makes the first step towards finding peace, when he is finally able to be honest with himself.
Why can't you stay? Come on, Patty.
I can't beat it. I can't beat it. I'm sorry.
The closing scene of the film reflects the first, offering us the smallest glimpse of hope for the future, the potential to heal and grow, even if that time has not yet come, and potentially never will.